Good afternoon. Please take your seats. I call the meeting of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security to order. Colleagues, the agenda for this meeting has been distributed. As usual, could I please invite you to adopt the agenda? Are there any objections? I'm hearing a slight objection from the Canadian delegation. But, that's an indication of acclamation. Seeing no opposition, the agenda is adopted. Now, at the meeting this morning, we reached Amendment 22. Before moving to Amendment 23, it is the Chair's understanding that the Turkish delegation wishes to propose an oral amendment to paragraph 23. I will tell you that I have spoken to Ms. Sederfeld. She feels that the oral amendment is quite appropriate and in fact is helpful to the draft resolution. Now, Mr. Göçer of Turkey, do I understand that you offer this oral amendment? Is that correct, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And with having been advised by the rapporteur that she has no objection to the amendment being considered, does anyone object? There being no objection, the amendment will be considered. Mr. Göçer, you are recognized to speak on your oral amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and also thanks for Sederfeld. We would like to make an oral amendment to paragraph 23 of the draft resolution and reformulate it with a call on all participating states to uphold their OSCE commitments and make use of OSCE toolbox. As I mentioned at the morning session of the first committee, it is the duty of all participating states to uphold their OSCE commitments and use the OSCE tools. None of us are immune from challenges. We believe also that there is still room for development for every country, including Turkey, to enhance and to better uphold the OSCE commitments. So, we kindly ask for full support of all committee members to this request. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Seeing none, what is the opinion of Ms. Sederfeld on the amendment?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I agree on the amendment.
I shall now put the oral amendment to the vote. It will be decided by a simple majority. Will all those in favor of the oral amendment please raise their voting cards? And cards down. Those opposed, please raise your voting cards. Are there abstentions? Noted, and the oral amendment is adopted. We will now continue our consideration of the amendments submitted to the draft resolution. We have 11 yet to consider. In discussing amendments, I will call the proposer of the amendment or amendments first, and then we'll call for any opponents of the amendment. I will then ask Ms. Sederfeld, the sponsor of the draft resolution, for her opinion. Following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. In the interest of time, if there's a very clear majority in a vote on an amendment, I will announce the result only. If the vote is close, then with the assistance of clerical help at the dais, we will announce the numbers voting for, against, and abstaining. I now call Ms. Michelson from Norway to propose her amendment number 23. Ms. Michelson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I still think it's important to point out the problems and the challenges we have in Turkey. So I propose to add the following to the paragraph 23 after the words external threats. And in this regard, regrets the measures taken against Turkish parliamentarians, including their imprisonment and depriving them of the possibility to exercise their popular mandate. The draft resolution does not otherwise mention the imprisonment of Turkish parliamentarians. Nonetheless, our parliamentary assembly has repeatedly reiterated its strong solidarity with the Turkish people in their fight for the reiterated preservation of democratic institutions following July 2016 failed coup. We have reiterated our expressed concerns over the arrest of parliamentarians, reiterated several times during the past year. We have also expressed our hope that the Turkish parliament would continue to play an important role in public debate on Turkish challenges and threats, and still ensure adherence to fundamental freedoms. I think this should be reflected in this draft solution, so I urge support. Even if we have changed the paragraph 23, I think it's important to point out the problems we have in Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Michelson. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 23? Yes, the delegate from Turkey is recognized.
Thank you, Chair, again. We are against this proposal. In this regard, I would like to make a few brief remarks. The impunity of 154 MPs from all political parties represented in the Parliament was lifted in June 2016 as a result of 810 pending case files before the judicial authorities. In this context, AK Party, CHP and MHP deputies, including party leaders, have already given depositions. Certain HDP MPs deliberately refused to give depositions despite the call of judicial authorities. Courts issued arrest warrants to complete proceedings. Some have been detained on remand. Others have been released with judicial control measures. The process continues in accordance with our national legislation. It is conducted in line with the principles of the rule of law and in observance of our international obligations. There is an ongoing legal process. No one is above the law. Utmost attention is needed to avoid intervening in the independence of judiciary. In a country where the rule of law reigns, no criminal activity can go unnoticed. It is not important whether perpetrators are elected MPs or not. This is how the rule of law works in all democratic countries. So we call for the rejection of this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. What is Ms. Sederfeldt's opinion on the amendment?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I am in favor of the amendment. I think it's extremely important that we adopt this amendment. The change in the paragraph, I agreed on that, the oral amendment, because of that. I think it's important that all OSCE countries keep its commitment. And in that includes that the situation for the Turkish parliamentarians. I am in favor of the amendments. Thanks.
I shall now put Amendment 23 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 23 please raise their voting cards? Please lower your voting cards. Those opposed, please raise your voting cards. Thank you. And please lower your cards. And are there any abstentions? And the Amendment 23 is adopted. We now move to Amendment 24, and I call on Mr. Sondergaard from Denmark to propose Amendment 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we discussed earlier, there was a very harsh attack from President Erdogan on the election observation from Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly and from the ODIHR. A very harsh attack, and he even enlarged that harsh attack to also count on OSCE as a whole. In a speech on election night, even before the report was made, he said, and I will quote what he was saying, he said, "We will neither see, consider, nor recognize those political motivated reports that you will draft. And he said, first, you should know your place. That was his answer to organizations where Turkey themselves is a member. That is not good. That is very bad. And I think it's important that we use this opportunity to take distance from these attacks. Also because if we accept such kind of attacks on UDIR, on Council of Europe, PA election observations, what will happen in the future when we have election observations together with them? This is, as Erdogan himself said, also an attack on us. And therefore, I would forward this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wishes to speak against Amendment 24? The delegate from Turkey.
Thank you, Chair. Again, we are against this proposal as well. Our authorities extended their full cooperation to the limited referendum observation mission throughout the country, as underlined during our various contacts with mission members themselves before and after the referendum. However, we faced with a clearly biased approach based on prejudices. Politically motivated and accusatory statements were used in the report. These statements go well beyond the mandate of monitoring mission. One of the observers shamelessly gave a pose in front of the so-called flag of PKK terrorist organization that it cost tens of thousands of lives in Turkey. And then, even more shamelessly, he posted it on social media. It is not possible to give any credence to report drawn by a delegation comprising such a person. Moreover, some others engaged in activities that clearly supported one side of the campaign, thus compromising their neutrality. We have always welcomed objective criticism. What we expect from ODIHR and Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe is to reflect their experience to ensure objectivity and impartiality of observation missions. I would like to underline that Turkey firmly upholds the principle of the rule of law. Despite the extraordinary circumstances in our nation has gone through, all fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of assembly, are fully respected and guaranteed under our Constitution. We therefore call for the rejection of this amendment.